So I hereby open the Extraordinary Council meeting on Tuesday the 9th of April at 6:10 p.m. Can I ask...
9th of June, Mr Mayor.
9th of June. Thank you, Councillor Serenos. Could I ask Councillor De Souza to read the prayer, please?
I'd be honoured, Mr Mayor. Almighty God, we humbly beseech you to bestow your blessings upon this council and to direct and prosper our deliberations to the advancement of your glory and the true welfare of the people of Randwick and Australia. Amen.
Councillor Bowen, could you read the acknowledgement of country, please?
I would like to acknowledge that we are today meeting on the land of the Bidjigal and Gadigal peoples who occupied the Sydney coast, being the traditional owners. On behalf of Randwick City Council, I acknowledge and I pay my respects to the elders past and present and to Aboriginal people in attendance today.
Councillors and members of the public, I'd like to declare a 1-minute silence for deaths in custody, and at our ordinary council meeting in 2 weeks' time we will do a more appropriate acknowledgement of country. So can I just have the timer for a minute's silence, please? Thank you. Could I have apologies and granting of leaving of absences, please?
I have an apology from Councillor Luxford.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Any further? No, we're all here. The absences, please. Councillor Andrews and Councillor Sravinos. Can I have declarations of pecuniary and non-pecuniary interest, please?
Thank you. I wish to declare a non-pecuniary, non-financial interest in that I know Ms Rona Wade, who is speaking on NR2 of 20, the rescission motion. I know her through my involvement in the in the council area.
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. Just a non-pecuniary, non-significant interest in regards to matter number GM5/20. I note there's a mention of St Spiridon College in the draft budget. I declare an interest. I am a parish of St Spiridon, and also my son goes to St Spiridon College. But I will be voting on the matter.
Thank you. Councillor Sravinos.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Since Councillor Andrews is making a declaration in relation to St Spiridon College and the fact that they've been mentioned in the operational budget, I too will declare a non-significant, non-pecuniary interest in GM5/20, in that I am a parishioner of St Spiridon Parish, and I attend quite frequently the church. But I'll be voting on the matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Nielsen.
Thank you, Mayor. Same acknowledgement as Councillor Matson regarding Rona Wade, and the same acknowledgement for Paul Barnacote. Thank you.
And Councillor Shuri.
Yes. Same. It's NR 220. I've known Rona Wade through the precinct, and I also know Mr. Paul Barneycoat for the Prince's precinct. It's non-significant, non-pecuniary.
Thank you. So, for the addresses of the council by the members of the public. Oh,
Same as Councillor Matson, what Councillor Sherry just said. There are speakers here tonight that have been involved with the precincts for many, many years. So.
okay, thank you. It's the privacy warning for the members of the public. In respect of Privacy and Personal Information Protection Act, members of the public are advised that the proceedings of this meeting will be recorded for the purposes of Clause 69 of Council's Code of Meeting Practice. Audio-video recording of the meeting is prohibited without permission. A person may be expelled from the meeting for using or having used an audio-video recorder without the express authority of the council. We'll now move to the speakers. And I'll just let you know you have 3 minutes and then you can request a further minute extension. The first speaker for GM 5/20 for the draft Randwick City Operational Plan and Budget 2020/21. 4 is Mr. Lee Roberts representing Bike East.
Thank you. So again, my name is Lee Roberts, and I'm the acting Randwick coordinator for Bike East. And I'd like to start by thanking you for this opportunity to speak tonight, as well as the ongoing engagement of council members and staff with Randwick's bike community. That's good. Bike East strongly supports the temporary and permanent bicycle infrastructure proposed in response to Council Resolution NM 40/20. Next slide. This infrastructure addresses the many calls for expanded active transportation in response to COVID-19. These calls have come from state government and from leading health and transport experts and from business leaders. And they all call for a quick provision of new bike lanes and new pedestrian infrastructure in the face of the ongoing need for physical distancing and for the temporary hobbling of public transit and for the pressing need to reopen and reactivate our economies. So Bike East also supports these provisions, these proposed routes, because they address what has been recognized as the most pressing infrastructure needs, both by Bike East and by others, that include better access to and from UNSW and the Randwick Hospital campus, and connections to the world-class recreational facilities of Centennial Park and the Eastern Beaches. And I think we've all seen in the last few months how critical these facilities are to the cultural and social resilience of Randwick. And finally, we support these routes because they deliver significant progress on 4 of the 11 priority bike routes that were identified by Council in 2015. And these routes go a long way towards providing safe and comfortable bike travel for all riders, not just the strong and fearless, throughout Randwick and beyond to the CBD and Greater Sydney. And so finally, I'd just like to thank you again for your time. And as usual, I invite you to come out on a bike ride or have a conversation with Bike East about the ongoing need for bike infrastructure in Randwick. Thank you.
Mr. Roberts, would you like, if there are questions, would you like to answer them, please? Any questions for Mr. Roberts? Thank you.
Thank you.
So now we move to NR 2/20, notice of rescission motion submitted by Councillors Nielsen, Matson and Shuri. New South Wales Draft Liquor Amendment 24-Hour Economy 2020 submission. I'll go first with against, Mr. Aidan Morrison. So you have 3 minutes, Mr. Morrison, and an extension. Thank you.
I'm one of the founders and owners of Bat Country. Bat Country is a small cafe, bar, restaurant that is in the spot. I've been living in Randwick for about 10 years. I've been a barista and bartender all over the east, but a bunch of other restaurants and cafes in Coogee. And a bunch of my friends and I, basically, literally people we lived and worked together with in Coogee, founded Bat Country because we wanted to not be stuck in the Coogee Bay Hotel every time we wanted to go for a friend for somewhere to have a drink and enjoy a place to sit down. And that's the core of my appeal to all of you here today. I've put this already in an email to all of you, I believe, that hopefully you've received. So I don't want to repeat too much of that tonight. The biggest thing I'd like to emphasise is just the practicalities of what makes it possible for this trial to be successful. And I know that in the business papers that were previously submitted, it was put that it should be in Maroubra Beach and Randwick Junction. There was in the report of the Nighttime Committee, which I was a part of, it did mention in a brackets e.g. Maroubra Beach and Randwick Junction, a suggestion of having two places to trial. At the moment in Maroubra Beach, everything is pretty much all buttoned up by about 8 p.m. There is absolutely no chance whatsoever that any business could keep their doors open for 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours of being completely dead and empty on the hope that allowing the 5th hour after that to be opened might actually do something good for them. Okay, so I just want to disavow you of any illusionment. There can be no hope that that motion in its current form could be perceived to do anything good to actually trial the extended 1 a.m. trading. It absolutely has to be amended to some other place where there are businesses such as ours that could possibly have a real shot at trying to extend and improve the nightlife offering, okay? And that's what would be perfect in a place like this spot. Generally on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, we're not full at closing time, approaching midnight, but we might have half of the venue full, feeling still lively, still feeling fun, and we would love to be able to extend to stay open for a little bit longer. So that last couple coming back from a date at the cinema, or even the cinema workers, the guys that we know, we sell them their coffee to, we're a cafe during the day as well, that they can come and have one more drink with us. I'd also like to emphasise as well that we are not asking for something that is not already granted elsewhere. If you look at the hotels in our area in particular, just 250 metres away from our front door, the Royal Hotel has a licence currently to trade pretty much every day of the week till 4 a.m. 4 a.m. We're seeking one. A little bit further up the road, the Coach and Horses has a licence to trade until 6 a.m. on Friday night, 5 a.m. on Saturday. I just want to emphasise how difficult it is for small business owner-operators, locals like us, that created the place that we would like to drink at, to compete with these guys that already have such enormous capacities, and as well, on average, and I discovered this from reading up on the latest reports, on average, their pokies, they have on average, these 15 hotels, 25 pokies each, make about $800,000 profit per quarter.
Mr. Morrison, you've got another minute to go.
Okay, 1 minute. I'll take that. Thank you very much for granting that. They make about as much money as a small cafe profit in a quarter in their gaming room could hope to turn over in our gross revenue in about a year, okay? And they currently all have the license, and that's where the problems arise, okay? So please don't punish the small bar operators, the cafe, bar, restaurant owners like me for the problems that have risen solely from a different set of businesses. If you could, and you have a problem, you should take away an extra hour or an extra 100 people capacity from those businesses rather than preventing us from offering a more diverse and more interesting, more intimate, more cultured place for people to enjoy a little bit further later into the evening. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Willing to take questions?
I'm absolutely willing to take
Any questions for Mr. Morrison?
Thanks very much for coming in today. Just wondering the current hours that I know the hours you're allowed to trade, but I'm just wondering from Monday to Saturday, what would be the hours you trade until?
Typically, we trade until just before midnight, and it's a little bit quieter on Monday, for example, like we might be shutting up about an hour before that. But every other night, we try to allow the last people to linger until our time. We have to have pretty much everyone out the door a few minutes after 12, and everything's shut up and quiet by midnight, absolutely. So last drinks are about 22, if you ever want to have a drink.
Councillor Veitch.
Thank you very much. Could you perhaps explain a little bit more the impacts of, first of all, perhaps the lockout laws that have been in place and just relaxing in more recent months, followed by the COVID restrictions, what sort of impacts they've had, A, on your or local small businesses, and B, on the ability of sort of young adults to go and enjoy some kind of evening entertainment in their local area?
For our business, we lost about 57% of our revenue, and it would have been much, much worse than that if we didn't have a cafe. Like, we actively open for bacon and eggs and coffees early in the morning. So that part of the business was able to stay relatively strong, and we transitioned really deliberately to doing delivery services. We literally hired scooters to get our bartenders driving around meals. We baked big trays of lasagnas. So we managed to do pretty well. Lots of other of our neighbours just closed their doors, because if you only have a dinner dine-in service, it's completely, there's nothing you can do at all. So we lost more than half of our revenue, and we're now trying to open up a little bit more. The 4 square metre rule, once we take out our kitchen, take out our bar, take out our toilets, gives us a capacity at the moment of 15. Only 15. When we were allowed to have 10, we decided not to open. We thought we'd be allowed to have 20. Now we're having to fly on new advice from the police with 15, and we're going to see whether that works. But it's extremely hard for us to operate in a normal, profitable capacity. But we're having a red hot crack. That's the sort of guys we are. We try to serve everything to everyone that we can. We keep our coffee machine open late. We serve lots of coffees to police and ambulance drivers. They come in almost every night. There are police at our door to buy coffee. So we've done our very best, and we're surviving as best we can, but it's still less than half of what we're used to having in revenue. And we've had to slash as well all our margins by trying to compete with alcohol bottle shops for takeaway alcohol and that sort of thing. So much smaller margins. And as a young person living in Randwick, I've been stuck at home for the whole time. At the moment, there's almost nowhere to go. It's hard to go somewhere without booking in advance. Being refused the doors are still a difficult thing. So desperate for opportunity to kind of relax and be able to move around our neighbourhood, knowing there'll be a place we can get into.
Thank you, Mr. Morrison. No further questions? Thank you. So now we have, speaking for the rescission motion, Ms. Rona Wade. And again, Ms. Wade, you've got 3 minutes and an extension of a minute and questions afterwards.
Okay, thank you. I'm speaking for the rescission motion and request that any proposal to extend hours excludes Coogee. The Nighttime Economy Report, which is a fabulous big document here, says that there is already a concentration of licensed venues in Coogee, and that Coogee should retain existing DCP hours due to intensity of uses and activities. And so too the planner's report that went to Council, CP 3519, that stated that changes to enable extended hours would not apply to the Coogee Town Centre, given the existing concentration of licensed venues. And that report was unanimously approved by this Council. So then on May 26th, a few weeks ago, the planner's report on the public consultation of the nighttime study said there was strong support for extended hours for 6 named locations, and Coogee was not one of them. So an objective of the nighttime study was to encourage a broader geographical spread of nighttime activity across the LGA, enlivening local centres and providing local employment opportunities. And further on, the report advises that the planning processes should encourage this geographic spread to help avoid an excessive concentration of venues, thus minimising the potential for antisocial behaviour. So neither this objective nor this advice are met by including Coogee. Coogee is where most of the late time activity in Randwick happens now. Making it more of a late night magnet undermines efforts to extend the geographic spread. It also threatens a return to the days when Coogee was New South Wales' crime hotspot. And some councillors here will remember how hard it was to deal with the alcohol issues in Coogee. It took many years. Today it is a more family-friendly place and is perceived as much safer. And this did not happen by accident. It took a lot of effort by residents, council, the police and Liquor and Gaming. So council spent 12 months on this study and the consultation, a fantastic effort, and it received 176 survey responses and 14 submissions, all made on the understanding that Coogee would not be included in any extension of hours. And it seems to me that to include Coogee at this late stage makes a mockery of the entire process, the entire consultation process. I have contacted the police and they confirmed they were consulted on the earlier recommendation, but were they consulted on Coogee being included in a trial of extended hours?
Sorry, Ms Wade, you've got another minute.
Okay, and picking up your point, of course, we all agree, the nighttime economy study was before COVID, and we all agree that now local businesses need a hand. And I agree, but not at the expense of the safety of visitors and residents of Coogee, nor the nighttime good order of the area. And instead, I urge council to look at ways to help all businesses, not just those that rely on the sale of alcohol. So I ask you to support the rescission motion and exclude Coogee from extended closing times. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms Wade?
You made a reference to the degree of support from the police for the earlier recommendation, but possibly not the actual resolution. Is that an issue that should be clarified?
I would have thought so, given that their support was sought on the earlier recommendation. And certainly the police have expended a lot of resources down in Coogee, and now less so, and I understand they're quite happy with the situation now compared with how it was not so long ago.
Follow-up question. Are you aware of any individuals that were consulted on any proposal to include Coogee in with the trial?
Absolutely not, no. And we all responded to this survey, we all responded on the understanding that Coogee would not be included. And so many of us supported the basic thrust of this report. We all support small bars. So it came as a shock to see that suddenly out of the blue, Coogee was included.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
Any further questions? Thank you. Thank you, Ms Wade. And now, second speaker 4 is Mr Paul Barnicoat. And you have 3 minutes, and we'll grant you an extension of an amount.
Thank you. I'm here to talk in favour of the rescission motion. I live in the Randwick precinct area, which includes the Spot and Randwick Junction. As the secretary for almost 1.5 years now for the Randwick Precinct Consultation Group, that's going from strength to strength in numbers and understanding of how to be effective in supporting residents' views, I'm privy to many residents' views on many subjects. The issue of later licensing hours in our area, the Spot and Randwick Junction specifically as a potential, has sparked fury amongst many of our members, including those who we talk to via our Facebook site. They're already incensed at the lack of effective action on pubs that cause noise and disgusting behaviour late at night already. We now see a proposal to extend hours with the obvious reduction in residents' amenity in our area at both the Spot and Randwick Junction. The demographics of this area and the massive majority of residents over businesses make us wonder who council are here for, which could be our ignorance. Yes, there are residents that run businesses and also residents that can't seem to drink enough before midnight. They are a minority. The DA process cannot be relied on to stop everyone getting longer hours either. I used the McDonald's example last year. Whilst it's not licensing laws, we put in submission for DA2 to 2020, requesting, when they requested to open till 3 a.m, we proposed as a precinct resolution the input that was unanimous, 12 a.m. It was granted for 2 a.m, so we cannot see how the residents' views are being represented already on DA submissions. We support the nighttime economy massively. Aidan gave a great speech. We support the nighttime economy up to 12 o'clock. in this area. The fact that there are existing licences later than that is not relevant to extending them. It's pointing at an existing problem. Any measures to simulate activity are welcome up till 12 p.m, but not in predominantly residential areas of the Randwick LGA. Just because a few residents want a beer after the long, arduous light rail trip back from the city doesn't mean we should open up this area, potentially as an attraction to people that want to use the light rail to get in and out. This is not good for residents as a concept. Finally, the consultation needs to be thorough and significant on the issues of extending any hours in this area. The local character statements that have just come out, we are feeding plenty of input in on those. Hopefully, I think they're due tomorrow. Making that centre of our area a special area is no excuse to widen it up for business when the residents aren't looking for it. That's it.
Oh, you're right on 3 minutes. That's well prepared. Thanks, Mr. Burney. Any questions for Mr. Burney? Thank you. Sorry, councillors, I just wanted to make sure that we weren't missing a councillor. So we'll move on to, there's no mayoral minutes, so we'll go straight into what we've had speakers for, and we'll just go straight into the order of GM 5/20, draft Randwick City Council operational plan and budget for 2020-21. So can I have someone move it, please? So I've got Councillor Parker moving it and Councillor Andrews seconding it. Yeah, as per the business paper, yeah. You want to have an amendment? Okay. Do you want to read it out and then I'll see if you get a seconder?
It should be working. Yeah, it's working out. So I just wanted to put forward an amendment to the operational plan as part of the business support package that council explore options. I sent it through, it'll be coming up in a minute. Council explore options for providing businesses with a custom designed sticker for them to place on the sidewalk in front of their shops to help promote and manage social distancing.
You're going to have a seconder? Councillor Strickland.
I'll second it.
Seconded.
To accept that?
Yeah, so it's happy to accept it? Yeah. So we just... so it becomes recommendation H, is that right? Yep. Councillor Parker, as the mover, would you like to speak on?
Look, just very briefly, Mr. Mayor, I would just like to commend our officers on a preparation of what I think is actually a very sound and a very innovative response to what are very extraordinary times. If you go through the report to us, it just outlines the significant drop in revenue that councils have experienced in the range of upwards of $10 million in responding. As a result, that for any council would pose an extraordinary challenge, and I think the way in which we have managed to respond to this is one not only that is appropriate, but one that our residents would support. They will experience no change in the service levels which we are providing to them, and in fact, what we have managed to do is stimulate our local economy in the process. We've got significant infrastructure spending in the tune of $48 million, as well as some standouts, including $350,000 for economic placemaking and $500,000 in public domain planning, and $3.7 million as part of an additional support and recovery package. So look, I think that this gets the balance right. I know that there will be competing discussions around whether or not it is appropriate for council to maintain our sound revenue base, or whether or not we should be handing more back. But what I think is that the best way where council can support our residents and local businesses is by pumping as much money into the local economy as we can, and I think that this does that with a very ambitious capital program. So look, I commend this year's operational plan to the council.
Thank you. Councillor Andrews.
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. I'll just be brief. I'd like to first commend the General Manager and her staff for putting together this budget during troubled times of COVID-19, and also congratulate yourself, Mr Mayor, on your budget. I always call this the Mayor's budget because it's the Mayor of the day who has a lot of input and contribution to this budget. But I think in the times we're at, I think this budget reflects really good on Randwick Council as a sense of community. We're here to stimulate the local economy. We're going to continue our capital works programs, and I see there's a lot of money there for capital works programs. And further to that, Mr Mayor, we're going to explore our cycleways, something which I'm glad to see, and I hope my dream comes true to see a cycleway one day from La Perouse to Kingsford, a dedicated cycleway for the future to keep bikes off our streets, but a dedicated cycleway just for cyclists to use. And that's something which I would like to see in the coming years, and I think this budget goes towards cycleways for the future. So I'd like to commend the staff and yourself for putting together this budget.
Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Councillor Stavrinos.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Tonight I was going to put up an amendment, but I've reconsidered doing that because I think I've been convinced that we are doing the right thing. I wasn't convinced that spending $1.5 million on a temporary cycle path was the right way for council to go, because we have any number of other projects that we've had waiting for any number of years to be built, and now all of a sudden, from a motion that we had come to council 2 weeks ago, we are now looking to spend $1.5 million on something that will be temporary, and in the future there will be no proof or nothing to show for the money that we're going to spend. But having said that, I do see the benefits in cycling, and I think that this money would have been better spent on something more permanent, putting in permanent cycle paths. I don't feel that spending $1.5 million on something that is temporary is the right way to go, particularly at a time when the council is borrowing $14.5 million to prop up its budget because we're bleeding to the tune of $1.1 million per month in lost revenue. So even though I was going to put up that amendment, I'll refrain from doing so because I don't think it would be in the best interest of the council or our residents who like to ride from doing that. But I will like to take this opportunity now to thank our council staff and the finance team for putting together this very comprehensive budget at a time where economic turmoil has hit organisations and countries right around the world. Our council hasn't been exempt from any of those economic conditions and changes to the fiscal environment, and we are losing $1.1 million a month as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. And what I will say is this: drastic times call for drastic measures. Although I don't agree with a council rate increase of 5.52%, which will hit our ratepayers and residents hard, if we are going to deliver this most expensive budget in the history of Randwick City and maintain our level of services and deliver good on our major infrastructure projects, then we need to do this. Tonight, we are going to be delivering a budget which will see our council enter uncharted territory. $48.6 million in capital works funding, creating 3,000 jobs, not to mention $3.8 million in financial support packages to help assist local community groups and small businesses. This will include the waiving of fees and charges, along with the waiving of interest on council rates and offering extended periods of time and payment plans to residents and ratepayers who are facing hardship. At a time when unemployment in our city is running at 10%, we need to do what we can as a council to not only look after the financial well-being of our city, but to look to battle the social issues that are affecting our residents. And I'm pleased to say that Council, through this budget, will be delivering greater services to tackle those issues, the anxiety and depression and the heightened levels of stress that people are currently facing. Tonight, we are looking to borrow in excess of $14.5 million to bolster our coffers so that we can make up for this shortfall of loss of revenue incurred at this time. And this will be the first time in over 20 years that Council will be put into debt. And with that, we need to remember that fiscal responsibility and the eyes of residents will be on us to ensure that we are spending the money wisely and not frivolously. At a time when many of our residents are out of work and those working in the private sector will not be receiving wage increases, I think it is only fair to suggest that the directors of Council, being the top brass management, not accept any wage increases in this given financial year, and the same be applied to councillors. If this budget is going to be sold to the community as being one of the major infrastructure spending and delivering on maintenance and services, or maintaining services and delivering on them, it would be not a good look if our directors and councillors, who are leaders of the community and our council, accept any pay rise. We really need to think about this, considering we have an unemployment rate of over 10% in the city, and this could extend for well over 12 to 18 months. On that note, Mr. Mayor, I congratulate you and I congratulate the staff on putting together perhaps the most comprehensive budget that I've ever sat on or I've ever read in the 8 years that I've been on this council, and I hope that you take my words wisely and with wisdom, and I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Storinos. Any other speakers? Councillor Matson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, well, I welcome Councillor Stavridis' conversion to the benefits of pop-up bike paths. I'm sure the Minister for Transport will be gratified, the Premier will be gratified, and no doubt Clover Moore. It's good that we've got him back on board. With Harry on board, we can do this.
Councillor Shuri?
I'm just rising to speak and to thank the staff for putting together this budget three times. Over the last couple of months, it's had to change with the ever-changing COVID response. So thank you, staff, and all those people who pedalled away down there in that accounts department, and thank you very much. And I don't agree with not giving them a rise.
Thank you, Councillor Shuri. Any other speakers? If there's no further speakers...
I also don't agree with not giving them a rise. This is just absolutely phenomenal. The work that's gone into it, it's to help the people that need the help. We've saved over 3,000, I think, or 300 casual jobs. We've got money to, we're borrowing money to do what we need to do. And all this has been done with the brain cells of all these people that are looking after our council. And if that's their remuneration or their reward, then I think they deserve it 100%.
Thank you. So, councillors, I'll put it. All those in favour say aye. Those against? Declare that carried, unanimous. So now we move on to, councillors, I beg your indulgence, but I'm not going to have a break. I think we can get through this. So, we'll move straight into the notice of rescission motion NR2/20. Notice of rescission motion submitted by Councillor Nielsen, Matson and Shuri. New South Wales Draft Liquor Amendment 24-Hour Economy 2020. Do I have a mover? Which is...
Yes.
And Councillor Matson will second it. Councillor.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, councillors. I beg to indulge your, I'm going to ask for your indulgence, everybody, and move this rescission motion in a slightly amended way. Most importantly, of course, I'm still supporting point A. But I do believe that we should be having a trial somewhere. The report recommended us trial 2 locations, and those 2 locations, notwithstanding what the Secretary of the Randwick Precinct, Paul Bandicoat, said, and he spoke very well, I think that we still need to go with the Randwick Junction option and Maroubra Beach. And then the third point that I'm putting to you, which I think is the responsible way for us to consider extending the trial to other locations, is that we have a briefing as to the merits of extending the trial to other locations, because it's not just as simple as us ticking all the boxes saying that good things are going to happen because we extend the hours everywhere, because many of the locations are not trading up to their permitted hours anyway. I think it's much better for us to go into this trial in a considered way so that we can work out the pros and cons, and then we've got a much greater chance of extended hours working in other locations or other measures that we need to put in place so that extended hours are going to work in our area. So I'm hoping you're going to support the amendment, the rescission motion as amended. And the other, of course, most important reason that I'm moving it in this way is that there is absolutely no way we can possibly consider having Coogee included in this proposed extension of trading hours when it was specifically excluded from the report. I mean, there are so many mentions in the report where it says that, well, in section 7 of the the nighttime economy consultation material, it says that Coogee Town Centre is excluded because there's already a concentration of licensed venues. And then I know in the handout that we were given from the council officer, it helpfully tells us here on page 3 that the proposed changes in nighttime study to Coogee is no changes to trading hours proposed. Well, there was also no changes to trading hours proposed because the area wasn't even included in the study for for very good reason. And we also know that the police are very supportive of the behaviour down there at Coogee at the moment. I do not think we want to have extended hours down there at Coogee and have the potential for a trial to fail, in which case we're worse off than we are at the present time. So I do have this as an amended motion. I'm not saying that I don't rule out other areas that we might consider, but I think at least if we have a briefing on it, councillors, that we will have a better understanding of what it is that we're proposing. Because there are several locations where we know that for very many years residents have been upset by the trading hours from some businesses that have been trading too late, too noisy, so on and so forth. And then thankfully the behaviour has become more controlled, and so things are going along nice and smoothly. I do not think we want to be rocking the boat and having people not happy with the proposal of extended hours. I too love culture, I too love music, I too love going out to a nice place for dinner. I too like not having to pay too much for a good dinner. I'm a cheapskate, but I like good food and I like a nice environment and I like a bit of stimulation in the environment where I'm going to. But I do not want outdoor trading hours not properly controlled going up against our local residents. I know it says they need a DA for all this sort of thing and so on, so we're not going to be attracting very many businesses potentially anyway, but why don't we make sure by restricting it to Randwick Junction, where we know specifically that there are a lot of businesses that have outdoor dining already, all we need to do is to ensure that their soundproofing is adequate for the extended hours for their outdoor dining at night time. But most importantly, they can have the extended hours indoor, and hopefully we can work out some nice relationship from business to business so that we see Randwick Junction a little bit more vibrant, like a lot of other junctions are. So I'm hoping, councillors, that you will support this, and the reason that I'm moving it in this way, I'm going back to the original hours, as you will notice, so I'm conceding that point, but I'm also happy for us, and I'm very keen for us to trial something, but I certainly, councillors, do not want us to be putting forward a trial down there in Coogee. And in this way, by supporting this rescission motion, it gives us the option for extending the hours when we've had a chance to receive a briefing from our council officers and then decide where it is we want to extend the hours and the options, rather than just all jumping up in excitement and saying, oh yes, I want my place, I want my place, and I want my place. And I'm also not specifically ruling out locations at this place, because if we, at this point, other than Coogee, because Coogee was never actually in the proposal at all, so how in heaven's name it could suddenly, that's not blaspheming, is it, heaven's name? I don't think so. Anyway, I'll be very quick.
Over the 5 minutes.
Coogee should definitely not be part of this. So this rules out Coogee, and it allows us to still have a trial. So I hope, councillors, you will support this and see us moving forward in a very positive way.
Councillors, before we move on, I apologise, we should have voted on the rescission motion as it originally stood and then debate the new rescission motion. So I need to, the original motion. I'm going to take advice from the General Manager. Thank you.
Through you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, what you are considering at the moment is the rescission motion, which is the motion to rescind the resolution that was passed on the 26th of May 2020. Once that has been voted on, we would move to the motion that has been put forward.
Okay, well, Councillor Bowen, you had your hand up for the...
Yeah, I just wanted to speak on the rescission motion because I understood that what's been put before us is like a foreshadowed amendment if the rescission is successful. So I'd like to speak on the rescission but I think other people did. So, want me to fire away?
Go ahead. On the rescission motion.
Yeah, this is on the rescission motion. Councillors, I would encourage you to support the rescission so that we can move to the position foreshadowed by Councillor Nielsen, which I think is the very sensible position, and of course reflects what was in the report that was before us a couple of weeks ago. There's a lot of different aspects to this, what's before us, and it's been put to us in lots of different ways, in terms of generations and age, in terms of our response to a pandemic. And, you know, I have to say I am getting a little tired of hearing the response to the pandemic as being used as a justification for all sorts of changes, not all of which are good. And I would put this, what we voted on at the last meeting, in that category, not only for the inclusion of Coogee, which I believe was an act of bad faith with our community. I know that's strong words, but it was excluded. So it's come as a total shock to our community that Coogee would be once again looking at relaxing laws that would govern late night trading and service of alcohol, and I'll talk on that in a very brief moment. But also in relation to the spot, and I'll talk about that very briefly. But I think, councillors, before we get swept up in arguments about economic stimulation, about trying to create vibrancy and places for young people to go, when we're talking about Coogee, all of which are positive aspects, no doubt, and appropriate for a place like Randwick Junction or Maroubra Beach, which clearly are underperforming, and the council staff got it right to identify those two areas. But when we go to Coogee Town Centre, we need to really be very serious. And I think it's extraordinary that, from what I understand, that there's been no input from New South Wales Police in relation to a proposal to extend trading hours in the Coogee Town Centre. Given the history there, I've been on this council for 12 years, but it's no exaggeration to say that Coogee has changed dramatically for the better from what it was when I first got onto this council in the years before. People used to die on the streets of Coogee far too regularly. Ridiculous fights, testosterone-driven environment, alcohol-fuelled antisocial behaviour, fights in kebab shops, fights over pool's table, people losing their lives, young people, our young community. It's not a generational thing, it's a community safety thing. I've worked in pubs, I've worked in bars, I've worked in restaurants. You need to be careful with these sorts of changes, because it's not going to be us going down there at 2 o'clock in the morning on the streets of Coogee sorting out the mess. It's going to be the police. And we haven't spoken to them, and we haven't told our community about this change. So, councillors, I just think you have to right the mistake of last week, because it's going to come back to haunt us. And people will want to know, how has this occurred? And if you look at areas around Sydney in the past where there was relaxed alcohol and late night trading, Manly Corso springs to mind. You know, it kills the businesses. Coogee is a different world from what it used to be. There's good restaurants, there's good quality establishments down there that weren't there 10 years ago, because it was not a safe place to go. It was not a safe place for women to go, and it was just these beer barns, and the streets did not feel safe. We cannot go back there. We cannot go back there. And the way to fix it is to vote for this rescission and to remove this error of including Coogee when we told our community that we wouldn't. Insofar as the rest of the proposal, I don't support it for the spot. I think the spot is a different area and caters and is very much nestled in amongst a residential area, and I'm sure Councillor Roberts will remember a few years ago that one of the small bars up there on Peruse Road, not of course the establishment the gentleman mentioned this evening, and I don't think this one's still there anymore, but all sorts of trouble there, huge impact on local residents, and you've got to think about what works. The spot is a cosy environment built around the cinema. The Royal Hotel is not really in the spot, I think you could argue. And I think there's a danger also of not sticking to the council officer's strategy of trying to activate underperforming areas like Maroubra Beach or Randwick Junction. Because if we have an uptake, for example, in the spot or elsewhere, those areas that are underperforming are going to continue to underperform. So let's not kid ourselves about what we're trying to do here. If you're talking about stimulating the nighttime economy, the council has shown us the way, and I believe we made an egregious error on the last occasion. We can fix it tonight. If we don't fix it tonight in terms of Coogee, this will be a night that we will look back on as an opportunity lost. So I'd encourage you, for that reason alone, to support the rescission. And I emphasise again that without the input of New South Wales Police, that this is a decision we should not have made.
Councillor Parker, and then Matson. Oh, sure, go ahead.
Through you, Mr Mayor, to the relevant officer, could you please outline the notification process with police for any liquor-related development application which would be required?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In relation to licensed premises and the like, such as small bars, under the protocol that Council has with the police, those types of development are referred to the police as part of the assessment of the application.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Matson?
Thank you. Look, a rescission motion is necessary when a number of councillors start to feel that a resolution was either wrong or needs to be amended. In the case of this one, Councillor Nielsen has outlined the key issue of Coogee. And the information we received by memorandum today from the Director of Planning is quite specific. We had a draft study that had been put together from consultation with 900 people in the community. That draft study was then put up for further consultation, and another 167 people in the community responded. But on page 2 of that memorandum, and you should all have it, it's clear that the key question that was asked did not include a request for those recipients or respondents to express their position on Coogee. They talked about Randwick Junction, Kingsford, Kensington, Maroubra Junction, Matraville, Frenchman's Road, Maroubra Beach, the Spot. But as Councillor Bowen and Councillor Nielsen have pointed out and stated various ways, it's our credibility here as a council. If we had had a specific request for feedback from the community via that survey on the wisdom of incorporating Coogee, we might have got a quite different result. We cannot simply assume that because the respondents did not lobby us before that meeting, that there was not an issue. Clearly, there would have been if the respondents had been aware that some councillors were going to put Coogee, the Spot, and other items up for trials for inclusion in the trial. I wasn't aware before that meeting that this proposal was going to be put forward. If it had been circulated, I would have consulted the community, the Coogee precinct, as all of the East Ward councillors would have done, and we would have had feedback as elected representatives. We weren't given that opportunity. That's why I am specifically glad that Councillor Nielsen has put in the clause C, that council request a briefing in relation to the merits of extending the trial to other locations within the Randwick LGA. That will give all councillors a chance to come back to these questions. Look, I think the rescission motion has to be passed. I understand there's not necessarily unity of view amongst councillors as to which sites should be included in the trial studies. But look, if we pass the rescission motion, every councillor is going to have an opportunity to put their particular view forward. But we need to rescind it.
Councillor Shuri?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The reason I'm asking you to support this rescission motion is that suddenly Coogee was thrown in at the last minute. Nobody in Coogee has ever been asked if they want the nighttime economy, and in fact the police advised that it wasn't a good place for more small bars to open. I'm not against the nighttime economy. I mean, I'm happy for the trial to happen at Maroubra Beach because I live round the corner and that would be really useful. Maybe I should have put in significant. It is the fact that other areas were thrown in at the last moment without consultation with people who lived in Maroubra Beach or Randwick Junction would have had a chance to see that those places were mentioned on the business paper. All other areas weren't even slighted for these trials. So, and also, I mean, a survey where 900 residents reply, I mean, I don't know about you councillors, but I find that pretty poor, considering we usually get thousands in response to our surveys. So I put it out there that the community didn't even know that any of this was actually happening. So please support the rescission motion. Coogee was never ever mentioned as having to stimulate their nighttime economy, and as in fact we know, the police are not for it at all.
Any further speakers? Councillor Veitch and then Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Look, I do understand the arguments put forward by the other councillors, but I won't be voting in support of the rescission motion. I think for decades, Sydney has, I think a lot of the problems around drunken behaviour and so on that have cropped up in Sydney have really come up as a result of issues around licensing laws, where really for decades it has been extremely difficult for smaller establishments, for a whole bunch of different reasons to actually get any kind of headway. For many years, there was huge pressure from the clubs lobby to get an alcohol licence was hundreds of thousands of dollars. And it was actually Clover Moore who led the charge on that. And that was very popular when those changes came in. It made a big difference. It did change the face of Sydney, but they're not actually, in the scheme of things, long after that. We did see the lockout laws. And then we saw a whole lot of those same establishments which had really waited for years to take off and were very popular, sort of basically fell down again. And now we've got COVID, and I understand some councillors have said, oh, we're sick of hearing about COVID, oh, we're sick of hearing about young people. But actually I feel very sorry for young people at the moment. They really, for many years, the current generation of young people have really not had that many places to go. COVID has made it that much worse. There's a lot of young people out there suffering from very bad depression. Their education has been impacted. They don't have a job. They're stuck perhaps back living at home with their parents. And, you know, now we're going to force them to pay 20 or 30 bucks or more to go and travel to Newtown or Surrey Hills. You know, I remember even as a young parent wanting to go and, you know, celebrate a birthday or something with my husband when we had young kids. But there's nowhere to, you know, you want somewhere to go locally. You're paying a fortune for a babysitter, you know, so you'd like to be able to go somewhere local. That counts for young parents as well. They're probably not going to be going out till 2, but the fact that those hours have been extended gives a chance for more little establishments to open. People can go locally. Your kid, you know, your young adult children perhaps, or your nieces and nephews, your friends, have somewhere to go locally. You know, I've not that often going into the city at night, but on the times when I have and catching the bus home around midnight, it has been packed with young people coming back from the city to our LGA. No one is drunk, no one's inebriated, they're just sitting on the bus. There's nowhere to go locally, they go into town and they're catching the bus back in, or now the light rail presumably. So it's such a shame. We've got a big university, we've got lots of young people. There is nowhere for them to go. They're not looking out to get drunk, you know, and carry on. They're actually going out to Malabar Headland and our national parks. That's something you could also ask the police about. That is very well known. I was very happy to vote in support of restrictions of alcohol along our beaches, because I don't believe that volunteer or paid or volunteer lifeguards should be forced to rescue people who might go for a swim while intoxicated. But it doesn't, if we don't have these other places, there's just not that many options left. So, you know, the sky's not going to fall in. I think we should give this a go. It's just a trial. That they'll still be subject to DAs. You know, they'll still have to go through all of the processes, all those checks and balances. And as other councillors have pointed out, it is actually these large establishments who are already trading until 6 a.m, whether it's the Juniors or Churchill's or the Regent Hotel. They're all in Kingsford. They're currently trading on weekends until 6 a.m. The Coogee Sports Bars trading until 6 a.m. Coogee Pavilion on weekends till 3 a.m. You know, but we're really setting the bar so high for our small businesses, and they're not, as the gentleman pointed out, they are actually not the ones causing the problem. So actually, you know, our young people and our small business owners are having to pay the cost for issues caused by larger establishments, and that's really not fair. So if there is an issue, we should be looking at the problems caused by those larger establishments and asking them to make the changes, or forcing them to make the changes. But I haven't actually seen any of the councillors speaking against come to council with a motion asking for any, you know, raising issues about those particular establishments and about any problems they're causing since I've been on council. So I think that would be the more appropriate course of action. Thank you.
Councillor Parker and then Councillor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Look, I would just like to begin by saying that I oppose the rescission motion. And the reason why I oppose it is for several reasons, but the first one I would like to just begin with is actually just trying to outline why we are here. And we're here debating this particular proposal once again because Council has embarked on a nighttime economy strategy which recommended more broadly for extended trading hours for small bars, cafes and restaurants. And why I wanted to emphasise that point is because there is a broad recognition both in the local government sector, in the state government sector, in industry, as well as in policing, about the importance of offering diverse nighttime offerings. The demand for people to go out will continue. The demand for nightlife activity will continue, and it is a question of what types of uses which we actually encourage late at night. Several councillors and several speakers have spoken about large venues and large establishments where people fill themselves with booze. They do it late into the night, and then you have antisocial behaviour. What I would like to just emphasise in this particular point is this is the kind of activity which the proposal for extended late night trading for small bars, restaurants and cafes is intended to combat. Because what we know is that when you have people who go into singular venues that are open late, you have a crush of people in one particular venue. It becomes very difficult for large venues to manage, and it only takes one bad egg to ruin it for everybody. What this does is offer a diverse set of options so that you don't have everybody in there and charged in a particular situation. You have people who want to go to a show late at night and are able to go to a restaurant and afterwards have a drink. But also what we know from the research is that the more people you actually have on the streets from a diverse range of outcomes late at night are actually safer streets. And we know that because we've seen it all over the world. We've seen it in Europe, but more importantly, we're increasingly seeing it in Sydney. And that's why we've had a situation where we've had the lockout laws, and now what we've had is we've had local government areas working with police and actually going, you know what, there is a different way to do it, but there's also a way where we can do it and we can do it safely. And to date, both in the City of Sydney and in the inner west, which are looking at extended hours, antisocial behaviour on our streets has not been the experience at all, and dangerous behaviour late at night has ceased to be an issue. One particular thing I would like to talk about, there has been lots of debate around the inclusion of Coogee. What I would suggest is, were the rescission to be successful, you would potentially have a situation where you could have 2 a.m. in Randwick Junction, 1 a.m. at Maroubra Beach, and midnight at Coogee Beach. And so you would have a perverse situation where most of the restaurants and most of the venues actually are not able to take up the opportunity for the trial. And in the situations and in areas where the businesses are not, and then currently cannot justify trading up until midnight, generally, where they are already permitted to do so, that they would have that opportunity. So the reason I could not support the exclusion of Coogee is because I believe that, one, it would be unfair on all of the responsible owners who try to do their best, which are there, but also it would set the potential trial up to fail. And I think that a situation where there has been such significant work in that regard, I think it would be very counterproductive. The director touched on the fact that in relation to the police, that police will have input at every point during the process in any development application. They will have the ability to make an objection to any extension of late night trading for any particular venue or business. I would, while I'd hate to guess, I would suspect that there would be very few objections. And the reason why I think that there would be very few objections is because police understand that most of the antisocial behaviour occurs in the large venues which occur. There have been several which have been mentioned in particular locations that trade significantly later than small bars, restaurants and cafes do now, and will continue to trade significantly later than they will even under this proposed change. And then the last thing which I would further just like to touch on is it's fundamentally just about providing equity to the smaller players in relationship to the larger players, which have, in my view, pretty preferential treatment in this regard. There are some elements in particular pokies. Yep, thank you. In particular pokies, which I think discouraging people is something which we should be doing. And lastly, what I would touch on, and I would just firmly recommend to people, is if this rescission were to succeed, we would be left in a situation where we would have to go back to each town centre on successive occasions, going, what do you think here, what do you think there? And it would provide an inability for us to look at this holistically across the city. So I cannot accept the rescission motion as proposed.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Stavrinos.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Mr Mayor, tonight I won't be supporting the rescission motion. I know a number of issues have been raised by Councillor Sherry and Councillor Matson and Councillor Nielsen in relation to this. Now, I want to address some of those issues. We had one councillor get up and say to us that 900 people were surveyed in a city of 165,000. Well, statistically, you only need 400 people to get within 1% of accuracy. I did statistics at university, and that was what we were told when we were doing statistics. So the fact that we've surveyed 900 people gives more than enough accuracy as to the respondents and to what the community wants. Now, we had over 90% of respondents who responded to the nighttime economy survey telling us that we needed more vibrancy in our city, that we needed it. Now, I could also tell you, after speaking to a real estate agent today, the average cost per square metre of rent in Coogee is no less than $3,000. $3,000 per square metre. Now, Mr Mayor, during this pandemic, we have seen any number of businesses close, and we know, according to the Australian Bureau of Statistics, that 1 in 4 businesses will not survive the coronavirus pandemic, and at a time when they're doing it extremely tough, I'm not going to stand in the way of businesses being able to trade their way back into the black. And this is what this nighttime economy is all about tonight. It's all about giving businesses the opportunity to be able to extend their trading hours so that they can get back into some sort of normality and get some sort of return back on the money and the time that they've invested in these businesses. Now, Mr Mayor, I also want to go back to what the Director of Planning told us, that all these DAs will be subject to police scrutiny. They'll be scrutinised by the police. So it's not as if we're going to have these businesses just opening up and popping up everywhere without any sort of rule or regulation being put in place. But I can tell you, Mr Mayor, that the issues relating to antisocial behaviour and violence do not relate to smaller businesses. They relate to the pubs and clubs and the larger establishments around the city where we did have issues in the past. Now, 90% of respondents said they wanted extended trading hours. What we have to remember is that this is subject to a 12-month trial. A 12-month trial. It's not that as if we're going to make this permanent. This will be subject to a 12-month trial, which means that should there be any hiccups or any issues in relation to this, we will be reviewing it and going back to it and saying, sorry, no, it's not right, we don't agree with what we've put in place and we need to make changes. But why wouldn't we give these businesses the opportunity? You can't just say, and this is where I'm disappointed with the council report, why would we only limit this to 2 town centres? What we've done is allowed it to be put out across the board, right across our city. Why would we be excluding businesses in one particular precinct and not allowing that? Why would we be doing that? We need to give every business the opportunity, whether they're in Coogee, whether they're in Kingsford, whether they're in Kensington, whether they're in Matraville. Every business should be given the opportunity to have these extended trading hours. And I can tell you now, if you limit it to these 2 town centres, you're more than likely to have antisocial behaviour going on there, because when you've got large amounts of people congregating in an area, you will have issues. But to suggest that these smaller businesses shouldn't be allowed to have extended trading hours is ridiculous, because they will be subjected to the same responsible service of alcohol and rules that have been put in place for these larger establishments. And many of these businesses will not be able to fit more than 50 people into their premises. We're not talking about having 500 to 1,000 people congregating in these smaller areas. This is what needs to be remembered. Now, the other point I want to raise is that we have over 13,000 small businesses currently operating in our council area. And they employ people locally, and we have owners who have put hard-earned money and cash into these businesses along with their time. I'm not going to stand in the way of restricting their trade. And this is you know, a big problem. And in Sydney, we are a joke. We are a laughing stock for a city that considers itself to be global. After 10 p.m, you cannot go anywhere to find anywhere for a feed. I could only go to Victoria, Euros, McDonald's, or the casino for a feed after 10 p.m. But you go to Melbourne, I can walk down Lygon Street, I can walk down Chapel Street, I can walk down Collins Street at any time of the night, and I will find somewhere to eat. Why is Melbourne the city of vibrancy and the city of culture? Because they don't have the restrictions that we do here. Sydney is a laughing stock. We are a joke when it comes to nightlife, and we are a joke when it comes to going out and having a feed. And we need to do something about this. Now, the next point I want to raise...
Mr. Trevino.
All right, yeah, okay, no problem.
Can you wrap it up? Yeah, it's 5 minutes.
5 minutes, thank you. I'll round it up. Now, the amendment that we put up at the last council meeting was more balanced. It gives every business the opportunity in this city to be able to do business, to be able to have extended trading hours and bring back a culture and some sort of vibrancy to our city. To suggest that these small business operators are not going to abide by rules because of the larger establishments and what they've had in the past is just ludicrous. I'm not going to stand in the way of allowing these businesses to be able to prosper and to go further with their money and their investment and their hard-earned capital that they've put into these businesses. And I'll leave it at that.
Councillor Roberts.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Stavrinos. Great speaking there. Councillors, fundamentally, opposing this rescission motion is the fairest thing we can do as councillors for the city, for the residents and for local businesses. At the end of the day, it's a matter of fairness, and I ask you to consider that. It's fair that we extend the trial to all B1 and B2 areas in Randwick City. We can't just have it on 2 areas. We need to extend it to all the B1 and B2 areas to make it fair for all the businesses in those locations, but also, more importantly, all the residents in those locations as well. It's a fairer outcome. Also, this policy that I am supporting, and this rescission motion is seeking to obliterate, is a COVID-19 support policy. It supports a positive reaction to COVID-19. It supports the community. And I think that is positive, and we need to consider that. By extending it to B1 and B2, we also get the full data to get a very detailed report on the results of the trial, so we can then move forward with a sustainable nighttime economy that everyone likes. And that can be done in 12 months' time with the report. But the report will only be valid if we extend it to the B1 and B2 areas, so we can have a valid data gathering exercise, councillors. Council staff can handle the expansion. We already heard that from the Director. And as I said before, residents get access to their local venue, the local cafe that they would like to support. For some reason, they can't make it earlier in the evening. Maybe they've got kids to put to bed. Maybe they've gone to date night to the spot, to the movie, and they didn't get dinner. This is personal experience. And there's nothing there at the spot because people like Councillor Bowen, the East Ward councillor who represents the spot, doesn't want those cafes to stay open for some reason. You know, how is that a point of order? I'm just repeating exactly what he said. It was outrageous. I'm waiting for you to say not a point of order.
It is a point of order. The council's just saying I don't support cafes in the area. It's rubbish.
Well, that's exactly what he said.
Can you...
I'll withdraw, Mr. Mayor. I'll withdraw. So I certainly, as an East Ward councillor, support the spot and the local businesses and the residents. And I support Coogee as well. It's critical that their local councillors support their ward. It's very critical. Also, we heard from other councillors, there is a mental health peak problem at the moment, post-COVID-19, and we need to take that into account as well. We need to take that into account as well. Parents, they're obviously having difficulties with their lockdown and schooling at home. But Councillor Beach mentioned young people as well. All types, small businesses, they are on life support. Chefs, great creative chefs out there. They're ready to go. We just need to support them. And let's talk about Coogee. We need Coogee in it. Coogee needs to be included in it. It's the fair outcome. And frankly, if we include Coogee, it will temper the issues of the large venues in there at the moment, and that would be a good thing. And Coogee as well, frankly, I was quite concerned at the defamation laid on that district. It was quite distressing to hear. Coogee is a wonderful location. It's a wonderful location. People would like to go there and they would like extra choice to go there, because not everyone wants to go to the Coogee Bay Hotel, do they? I know I don't. I'd love to go there with my own wife on a date night in a small venue. You know, that's a great atmosphere, but at the moment I can't. It's unbelievable. Coogee is a great place to go if only there was more choice. So it's important that we do include Coogee, and that's why I will not be supporting this rescission motion. Finally, councillors, this is a matter of leadership. Post-COVID-19, we really do need to step up and try and think about what we really can do to support the community fundamentally in a real way, in the real world way, and this is one of those ways we can do it. So I ask you to reject this rescission motion so we can move forward with the trial. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor D'Souza.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Sorry, Councillor, just a question from Councillor Matson, just a question.
We good? Thank you. Bewildering new situation for me. A question through you, Mr Mayor, to the Director in relation to appointments made by the councillor. I note on page 2 of the memorandum that the Director circulated today that it is put that the study suggested a place-based approach to nighttime trading, which is based on the character of each centre. My question is this: if we have not asked or included Coogee in the survey, can we support can we maintain that we have in fact used this place-based approach? The question through you.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The purpose of the references to a place-based approach is to really understand the characteristics of different parts of the LGA in terms of the town centres. And I note that the study has other recommendations other than just the inclusion of extended trading hours for premises. It looks at lighting, public domain improvements, transport. So it is trying to take a holistic approach to different places and identifying what are those strengths within those town centres that can result in better activation of those spaces. So in relation to Coogee, it was identified that there is currently a high concentration of licensed premises within that locality, and does have a certain level of nightlife that currently occurs. But again, this study was undertaken prior to the current pandemic, and the question is whether it deserves a different response now.
Well, with all due respect, Mr Kiriakou, sorry, I shouldn't say your name, officer in charge of so many things. I don't agree with your sudden reinterpretation of the facts, if I can put it that way. Well, it's getting to that point. Yeah, sorry, I'm trying to make the point that I think that Councillor Matson asked you a very good question. Why was Coogee, the area of Coogee, not included? But there were reasons, weren't there, why Coogee was not included? And the fact that Coogee was not included, surely that then makes it irresponsible for us. I'm asking a question, if you would be so kind as to wait, Councillor Hamilton. It's irresponsible for us, sorry, I'm wordy, to include it, suddenly make a decision to include it when in fact we had ruled it out. The only reason we've ruled it in is because at the last council meeting, the majority of councillors suddenly ruled it in. That doesn't make it a valid inclusion, with all due respect, to this decision. I'm probably not wording it as skillfully and as tactfully as I could, but because I am extremely angry on the part of the residents of Coogee, who know how much the area has improved, and I agree with you, Councillor Roberts, it's a lovely place to visit
Councillor
and
Nielsen,
go to.
sorry, is it, because
So the
I've still got
question is,
Councillor
it
D'Souza
should
and
not
Councillor
be-
Hamilton,
sorry,
so is there a
It should
question?
not be included in this decision because it was specifically ruled out of the nighttime study conclusions. Is that correct?
Okay.
That's a question. Is that correct, please?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The study has recommendations included and a lot of research and analysis, which is ultimately a decision for this council as to what it sets in terms of its policy position, in terms of late night trading and the like. I will say that the study did originally recommend 2 particular town centres as a trial, but also contemplated and anticipated the potential for an extension of trading hours throughout the whole of the LGA.
And a follow-up question. It specifically ruled out Coogee, didn't it?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The study did propose that there be no changes to trading hours at Coogee.
Councillor D'Souza. Would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillors, this rescission motion is all about destroying opportunity and hope for many. As was pointed out, businesses are suffering. They have an opportunity to recuperate some of their lost funds. Now, one might ask, what's the difference in an hour? What a difference will an hour make? Well, let me tell you, those who know the restaurant industry, it makes a difference between whether you have 1 sitting, 2 sitting, or 3 sittings. Most restaurants have 2 sittings. That helps them to break even. But imagine if you gave them an opportunity, and that's exactly what we're doing, giving them an opportunity to have 3 sittings. That's when you make a profit. Now, the term leadership was mentioned by someone, and that's what it's about. Are we going to lead? Are we going to show others the way? We had a protest in Sydney and it was all about equity, everyone having a fair go, some people feeling that they didn't have the opportunity. Now, we can't make a rule for one suburb and not for the other. We can't say to the people in Coogee you can only open till 2 or 1 or whatever the time is going to be, and in Maroubra you can open for 2. That's not called equity. The fact is, as this mayor and this community should make decisions for all. Coogee doesn't belong to a small group of people or individuals who set the agenda. Coogee belongs to us all. We are all ratepayers. When the council invested millions of dollars into Coogee, it was done to lift the suburb, to bring tourists, to bring visitors to Randwick City. Now, we invest a lot of money there. We did it with purpose because we wanted to help those small businesses. Councillors, you know, Bob Dylan said, the times there are changing. He said to the mums and dads, don't criticise what you don't understand. The young people of today need hope. They need opportunity, and they need to be in a safe environment where they can have fun. We've taken the word fun out of life, councillors. These hard times have taken that word out. We need to bring smiles back on people's faces. We need to have fun. And that's exactly what this council and that wonderful councillor across who was the chair of the nighttime committee and others, they put a lot of effort into this. Let's do the right thing. You know, when it comes to alcohol in Coogee, it's a bogey word. Every time the word alcohol comes up, I get a handful of phone calls and others saying, from the same people, alcohol is unacceptable. The fact is, alcohol is here. Alcohol is part of our lives. And as was pointed out by others, When I was, I won't talk about my term when I stopped that alcohol at Christmas time. I was going to point out that the opportunity is there when things get out of hand for the mayor of the day to act, for the police to act. So what we're doing is just allowing people to do things within a constrained environment, but in doing so, we're offering the businesses hope, we're giving them opportunity, and we're doing it in an environment which is got rules and regulations, and in having rules and regulations, you can create a safe environment. So I won't be supporting this rescission motion. I don't know how the numbers are going to go. Maybe it'll get up. But in doing so, as I said, keep in mind that there are people out there that are suffering. There are businesses out there that are going broke. Feel for them. Ask yourself whether you're going to allow them to have 2 sittings or 3 sittings. Are you going to allow them to break even, or are you going to give them an opportunity to make a profit? Thank you, councillors.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hamilton.
I promise to be quick. One of the points that I haven't heard raised, and so I'm sure I'll be corrected if it has been, but we talk about stimulus and we talk about supporting the businesses, but by supporting the motion as it was voted last council election and not supporting the rescission motion, we're actually supporting jobs. And jobs have not been mentioned tonight, but the reality is these small businesses, oh, did you mention it? Well, only because Liberal councillor Stavrinos mentioned it. But jobs, the local jobs, right now there are a lot of people unemployed, so this is an opportunity to give them jobs. More small businesses, their success actually results in more employment. And I do remember someone mentioning that the chefs are ready to go. Well, so are some of the kids that have just finished high school. So some, a lot of the kids that are at university in our area, they're looking for jobs. So if we can help them out, if we can help out a lot of the students that are looking for jobs so that they can eventually move back out of home, because I do know a lot of them have moved back in home to help save some money. So that's the only point that I wanted to make, was that this is also not just about keeping businesses running, it's also about keeping people employed and giving them an opportunity to get a job in the local area.
Yeah, Councillor Hamilton. Councillor D'Souza, I think that crosses it just about everyone. Go ahead. Oh, no, sorry, De Rocha, sorry.
I received heaps of emails, I got phone calls, I got messages, and there was things like, I'm with the performing arts, I'm a street performer, I want to be able to go somewhere other than a city, other than Newtown, other than pretty much, they even mentioned Bondi, other than anywhere except there's nowhere in Rowing for them to continue to do that. I also had a lot of people say, please don't treat us the same as the bigger venues, because we're not. I know, they said to me, I know that you're against Coogee being in this because you've had history yourself and experienced it from Coogee with the alcohol. We're not part of that history. We're part of the future with the people that we want this trial. It is a trial. We want to prove that us little shops, us little cafes, bars, with that performer out the front, that, we can reminisce back some of the old days where we could go and have a, and go and watch a movie and then, maybe just sit down and have a cake or something and enjoy it. I listened to the speakers. Mr. Aiden, you really brought to life that, don't put us in the category of the Coogee Bay hotels and others. We work very hard. We're trying to make ends meet. We're, for the last while, we've made half of the money of what we could have, but we understand because of the pandemic. He's asking us to let us be treated the same. You are a resident, but this is what some shops have said. We're part of the community that are there, not just renting a shop to make money and, and then walk away at the end of the day. What hurts the community hurts us. Like I said, I'd come here with an open mind, and I heard the speakers, Rona and Paul, and I was like, oh man, I'm trying to keep an open mind. Then I heard Kathy, you know, when she, with the amended to her rescission, I'm going, okay, Coogie's out, so now I'm lost again, you know, what's going on? But I don't want Coogee out now when I think of it, because this 12 months trial, it's Coogee saying, I want to show the residents and everyone else that we're not trouble. We're actually the future, and hopefully bringing you into it with us and us into it with you. So you know, I can't support the rescission motion.
So councillors, I think I'll just thank you. So all those in favour of the rescission motion, please say aye. Straight to the division? Okay, I think I will. So all those in favour, please raise your right hand. Councillor Shuri, Councillor Nielsen, Councillor Singh, Councillor Bowen, Councillor Matson and the Mayor. All those against, Councillor Hamilton, Councillor Veach, Councillor Trevinos, Councillor Parker, Councillor Andrews, Councillor Roberts, Councillor De Rocha and Councillor De Souza. So I declare that lost. Don't need to. So the original motion stays the motion. And on that note, I will close the meeting at 7:50. Thank you, councillors.